Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to an all-new edition of War Week Radio. Guys, welcome. And before we introduce our featured guest of the evening, we do have to remind everyone that the show is brought to you by FightSaga.com. Guys, for all of the latest boxing news, please go frequent on the daily and bookmark FightSaga.com, your centralized hub, linking in all major boxing news wires. And guys, speaking of Fight Saga, we are being joined currently by editor-in-chief of FS.com. That's the one and only Mr. Lee Cleveland. Lee, welcome to the show, my friend. Lee, are you there, sir? Speak up, my friend. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly now. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Doing great, thanks.
Well, I tell you what.
Where do you talk boxing?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for, gracing and sharing the air with me this evening, because I know you're a busy man. So we're going to, you've got, hold on real quick. Okay, that's on my end. My apologies, brother. I had a technical difficulty right there. So the topics du jour are going to be Spence versus Pacquiao, and will the WBA reinstate Manny Pacquiao as their super WBA welterweight champion? And topic number 2, what's with the Eddie Hearn conspiracy theories, and does Hearn and AJ avoid Usyk dumping the WBO title? Number 3, can Wilder put forth an improved effort against Fury in the third fight? And last but not least, Crawford versus Taylor. Has it become the new Spence versus Crawford super fight at 147 pounds? Which one would you like to tackle first, sir?
Anything. It's up to you, man. Up to you.
All right, very good. Then we're going to go for the first one. Spence versus Pacquiao. Guys, this made a huge splash, right? A bunch of noise. Fans just went nuts and tore up the internet because BoxRec, when you look at the fight page on Spence versus Pacquiao on BoxRec, they added a third title on the line, the WBA Super 147-pound title. Lee, let me just finish by saying, subsequently, with all the noise that had been created by fans online, they just today took it off again. Lee, what does this say? What are you surprised about this? And do you think we're going to see the WBA hose Yordenis Ugas in this situation and reinstate Pac as their super WBA welterweight champion? Lee, I can't hear you, sir. Are you there?
I think yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, sir.
Certainly. I wouldn't be surprised. Because he is the
Lee, you're going in and out, brother. Yeah, you're going in and out, my friend. I'm sorry, brother.
Status. Okay. Because he has that lineal status, I absolutely think they'll reinstate him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's funny. Yeah, I can't hear you, Lee. I'm sorry, brother. Is it on my end? I don't think so.
I can hear you. I hear you perfectly.
Yeah, I can. Oh, yeah, I can hear me too. Unfortunately, yeah, you're kind of going in and out. Talk, please. I can't hear you. Well, yeah, we're suffering some technical difficulties, guys. My apologies. We'll try to get this straightened out. Want to thank everyone for joining us. So, but yeah, Lee, while you work out your microphone difficulties, we'll keep going. But yeah, guys, I mean, Manny Pacquiao is the man who beat the man. Okay, I can hear you now, sir. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
now I
I
can't hear you
absolutely
again.
think that. That's odd. I mean, I'm not doing
Okay,
anything
keep going,
different. I
sir.
don't know.
I can hear you now,
Yeah,
sir. Go ahead.
I absolutely think that he'll be reinstated because he's got that lineal status as the WBA super welterweight champion. And of course, because that gives the fight a tiny bit more if that means anything. So absolutely.
Okay, well, this is a complete contradiction to the WBC bylaws and their rules, right? That were just amended just a couple years ago. But that wouldn't be the first time that the WBA actually did this. And once again, the sanctioning organizations, they're going to always find a way to try and be a part of all the major events, especially when you're looking at a gigantic purse like this, right? They're going to find any way to tax and get that 3%. So, yeah, of course, they're nonprofit organization, my ass, Lee. I mean, so guys, and once again, so let's go from the beginning, right? Let's see. In January 2021, Manny Pacquiao lost his WBA super title after the organization formally stripped him of his championship distinction due to a 17-month period of inactivity, naming him their champion in recess. And according to the WBA rules, Chapter C, Rule 22, it says, when a champion is unable to defend his title within the prescribed time periods for justifiable medical, legal, or other reasons, reasonably beyond his control, the inactive champion may be named a champion in recess, and the committee may select official contenders who will fight for an interim title under Rule C 22 through 24. Well, in this scenario, guys, the WBA's regular champion didn't have to fight anyone to gain that distinction or earn that distinction. He merely adopted the sanctioned organization's super championship, right? And so everything was fine at PBC World, and they were actually, Heyman was actually putting together a summer unification with Yordenis Ugas versus the current WBC and IBF champion, Errol Spence Jr., right? But then the Pac-Man resurfaced, and he started, well, trying to negotiate with Bob Arum and Terence Crawford for a potential fight in June. But when negotiations between Senator Pacquiao and Top Rank collapsed in April, well, Heyman just gave a huge facial to Yordenis Ugas, scrapped that idea, and immediately reached out to Senator Pacquiao and his people. And obviously we're here now. Now he's put together a super fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Manny Pacquiao for August 21st. And now it seems the WBA may renege on their decision after hearing the announcement of this super fight taking place at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada, right? So here's the rules. Now, when it comes to champion in recess, here are their rules, and I'm citing this from the WBA website. And it says, quote, when a champion in recess returns after having overcome to the satisfaction of the championship's chairman whatever obstacle that causes inactivity, the association may order a title bout between the champion in recess and the interim champion, if one exists, or against another boxer designated by the committee. That's the most important part of this. And they amended this just a couple of years ago to cover their ass. So originally, it stated that a champion in recess cannot defend his title as champion in recess and may lose his status if he boxes anyone other than the interim champion. So before they amended this, the WBA rules stated that in order to come back as champion emeritus and fight for the WBA super title, he had to face the interim champion, which would be Yordenis Ugas in this case, but he's obviously not. So this is what the WBA inserted when they amended this just several years ago, from what I just found out. And this is how they're covering their ass, so they don't have another WBC Roy Jones situation on their hands, right? Now, once again, I'm going to read this again. The association may order a title bout between the champion of recess and the interim champion if one exists, or against another boxer designated by the committee. And so that's what you're going to see, guys. Errol Spence Jr. is that other boxer designated by the committee. So make no mistake, even though BoxRec has taken this off their site, you are going to see Yordenis Ugas left out in the cold, being reduced to the regular 147-pound champion, and he's going to defend that title. And you're going to hear this announced within a couple weeks. From what I've been told, Yordenis Ugas in a rematch with Sean Porter for the regular WBA 147-pound title, and Manny Pacquiao will be reinstated as the super WBA welterweight champion. So Errol Spence Jr. is truly, versus Manny Pacquiao, is now truly going to be a unification bout. What do you think of that, Mr. Cleveland? And do you feel for Yordenis Ugas, or do you think this is justified because he never really had to fight to achieve that distinction?
Of course, it's justified. I don't feel for him at all. They're bending the rules, obviously. They're bending the rules, but it's not a big deal. He's still going to get the regular title opportunity, and eventually, maybe if things go well for him, he'll get a shot anyway. So, and I don't think it's going to be, and I don't think as far as his paycheck, his purse, that won't be impacted. Regular versus super, for a guy like Ugas, it won't be impacted. It just gives the Pacquiao Spence fight a little bit more a tiny bit more historical significance. You like to say that this is, you're diminishing the quality, I guess, if you're saying it's for the regular WBA title. So you might as well have it for the real and legit WBA super title. So at the end of the day, it's not going to make a lot of difference, really.
Yeah, well, you know what? This doesn't add any credibility to the WBA, though, because as it stands right now, according to their website, they have 4 different champions, right? In the welterweight division. And now here it goes. The super champion, soon to be super champion again, is going to be Manny Pacquiao, with the regular champion being Yordenis Ugas. The interim champion is Jamal James. And now the WBA gold welterweight champion, who is the mandatory challenger for this sanctioning organization, is Virgil Ortiz with the WBA gold distinction. How do you like that, brother?
I hate it. It's a bunch of craziness. I've actually got one of those titles too, man. I've got a WBA title as well.
That's holding up your Levi's right now, brother. But I tell you what, though. So let's look at the matchup. You look at the odds in this, right? And odds, the betting line for most racing sports books have opened up with Errol Spence Jr. sitting at a very wide minus 450. And Manny Pacquiao is listed as plus 350, which is a 3.5 betting underdog. Do you agree with those odds at age 42? Do you think they're underestimating the Pac-Man right now, or do you think they're just, why have the odds, why have they been set this way, and do you agree with it?
For the most part, yeah, because you're thinking that, not only is, there are a lot of things going against Pacquiao. Age is just one of them. If this is, I think, had he been fighting continually and looking good, I don't think age would be one. But age now is one because he's a senator. He hasn't fought. It will have been over 2 years since he last fought. And he looked good against Thurman, obviously, but he didn't look dynamic. It was a very close fight. Keith almost caught up with him at the end. That knockdown really saved the fight for him. And because he's still a small welterweight versus a big welterweight, Errol Spence. Errol Spence, I think, is closer to his prime than Pacquiao. He's taller, rangier. He's got some pop in his punch. He looked dynamic against Mikey Garcia. Pretty good against in his last fight, against Danny Garcia. So they're looking at all these factors and they're saying, man, this guy should be the favorite big time. And you really can't, even though Pac has legendary status, it's just, you look at who's done what lately, and then you look at the differences in style, the contrasting, the differences in height and reach, and it's just not a very good matchup for Manny.
Yeah, so big question here, brother. I know the WBC is up for grabs on this, which usually means, customarily, that there's going to be Veda testing for this. Now, obviously, when Pac fought Thurman, there was no Veda testing because the WBC wasn't up for grabs, and they didn't have to implement that. Do you think it's going to make a difference there being Veda testing for both men from now until August 21st, sir?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I guess both camps are aware of it. The obvious answer is, obviously, if neither guy planned to do anything, then the obvious answer is no, it won't make a difference. If neither guy had planned to, take any PEDs. If one guy had planned to, well, then obviously this couldn't definitely make a difference. But I don't think this is going to make a difference. I really don't. But we'll have to wait and see. It shouldn't make a difference. No.
Well, it's going to be interesting at age 42. If there was any matchup in which I would condone both men taking the juice, it would be this one, because honestly, without it, I would say the odds makers in this case are being very generous to Senator Pacquiao. In my opinion, when you're looking at the style matchup, and guys, I went ahead and listed the link to the Fight Saga article that we just wrote. It's our Errol Spence versus Manny Pacquiao head-to-head preview. Check it out, guys, and be sure to like and share. I want to see the best version of Manny Pacquiao compete in this matchup, damn it. Am I wrong in saying that, Lee? Lee, are you there, sir?
Are you referring to the best version, the best juiced version?
Hell yes.
Or,
Hell yes. May the best juice win, baby. Come on.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there's any time, obviously Pacquiao's going to think, well, with the size and age disadvantage, size, age, and activity disadvantage, that he, if there was any time to, take a little something, now would be the time. I don't think him. I mean, obviously, here's the thing, Joseph. You could obviously get caught. He can get like this $20 million, $25 million payday, whatever. Get caught, and then them say, okay, well, you can't box for a year or 2 years, but this is his last fight.
Mm-hmm.
He may or may not take that option, so he comes up dirty. But I don't think so. I mean, I think that that would kind of tarnish his legacy. That would certainly tarnish any win, should he win.
That's right, because he's never tested positive throughout his entire career, regardless of what the rumors may be. He's never tested positive. So you're absolutely right. That's a very good point.
So I don't see him taking that chance. I really don't, just because that would tarnish not only his career, because then people would be like, oh yeah, see, he's been taking it all along. It would certainly put a damper on in any victory, should he win. So no, I mean, I don't see that. I don't see that happening.
So it's funny, and Freddie Roach has stated recently, and Manny Pacquiao has been consistent with this the entire time. And once again, if you guys have been watching the fights, and obviously you guys have, Pacquiao has been at Spence's last 2 fights in attendance. He even entered the ring after one fight. So let me ask you this. Do you agree with Freddie Roach and Manny Pacquiao's assessment that they see something that they think they can exploit in Errol Spence. What do you think that could possibly be, Lee? Because from where I'm sitting, I just can't see it with that Errol Spence intelligent jab, as well as him being the virtuoso aggressor, his ability to cut off the ring, close the distance, and fight effectively on the inside. What do you think Freddie Roach and Manny Pacquiao sees?
Yeah, I don't have the slightest idea. I think that, I do believe that Freddie wouldn't take this fight if he didn't believe Manny had some chance of winning. And I believe that maybe one of the reasons Pacquiao Crawford didn't work out is because maybe Freddie and Boy were reluctant, possibly. I know Freddie has expressed reluctance in the past about Manny getting in the ring with Crawford. Several years ago he did. Yep. So, but if this fight's going on with Spence, obviously maybe they see something. Maybe they think they can catch him. Maybe they see some sort of vulnerability in his defense.
You know what? I like I said before, I just don't see it. I mean, because if Manny Pacquiao chooses to begin the fight being the aggressor, like he started out against Keith Thurman, lunging in from mid-range, boy, you've got a guy who's very proficient defensively. And the foundation of Errol Spence's defense, boy, you've got to get past that beautiful, educated jab. And then his footwork, sliding in and out of range, is immaculate. And so if he resorts to plan B, which would be to take Errol Spence out of the pocket and move around the ring, well, then you've got one of the most proficient aggressors in the game, cutting off the ring, closing the distance very quickly, and fighting effectively on the inside, not allowing you to tie him up. I don't see it. I really don't see it. I mean, Pac still at age 42, he still has some of the best footwork in the welterweight division. So maybe that's what they're looking at, because mostly what they've seen is Errol Spence in his last several fights being stationary, just sitting in the pocket, not having to move forward against Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, obviously. Do you think they're having a misconception of Errol Spence's overall skills because of his last two matchups that Pacquiao attended?
It's hard to say. I mean, these are boxing guys, so it's hard to say that they're overlooking something in Errol Spence. I have no idea. Again, or maybe I have no idea. Maybe they're hoping he takes them lightly, or maybe it's what you said to me previously. A few days ago. Maybe it's like that old Rocky III movie, right, where Mick says, "All right, we'll give it one last shot." He's not confident in Rocky, but he's like, "Okay, we'll just give it one last shot, and then we're going to retire and go to the circus, so or be part of the circus." So maybe that's it, man.
Well, speaking of Mickey Goldmill, I think let's rewind a little bit. I think it's more the case. If I were Mickey, I'd be telling him, "Pac, you can't win, Pac." Oh, dude, because honestly, I don't see any way he's going to be able to win this one. Not at age 42. I mean, even in his prime, Lee, this isn't an easy fight for him. Even Manny Pacquiao at his prime, because of the height and reach disparity. This is a fight I think he cannot win. In my opinion, he would have a better chance even against Terence Crawford. Your final thoughts before we move on to the next topic, my friend?
This is one of the hardest fights of his career. This might be the toughest fight of his career. Right here, right now. At 42, it's possibly his last fight against this young, good thoroughbred, young, good, hungry fighter. This could be the toughest fight of his career. So I will say this: if he wins this fight, he's easily in the top 10 of all time.
I'll say top 5 all time, brother, if he wins this.
Even if he wins this,
Top five all time. And you know what? Kudos to Senator Pacquiao for even taking this fight.
Exactly.
This is something special. And he's a legend already. And this just solidifies it. This guy the little Filipino senator, is an absolute legend and a credit to the sport. He's not facing Logan Paul. He's facing one of the best fighters in boxing. And yes, take that, Floyd Mayweather. So, guys, we're moving on. Let's go to Eddie Hearn. He had this to say when, well, the news came out that Deontay Wilder indeed won the arbitration, and Bob Arum said, yeah, we're just going to, no step aside money. We're not going to give him a damn thing. We're just going to beat the bastard. Right? So now, guys, you're looking at July 24th at the new Allegiant Stadium, home of the Las Vegas Raiders. I can't even get used to saying that, Lee. In Las Vegas, Nevada, right? So this is what Eddie Hearn had to say about this. Quote, no one saw this coming. Wilder's attorneys didn't even ask for a rematch. They asked for damages. Well, I told Bob, what are you going to do about it? He said, we're fighting Wilder. I said, hold on. There's got to be a deal to be done. You got to try something. He said, they're not going to do that. We're just going to fight Wilder, and we'll do our fight later. And Eddie Hearn went on to say this, and he is, well, and justifiably so, he's a little perturbed. So he went on to say this, quote, I mean, what kind of ruling is that from an arbitrator? To order a rematch with a specific date, and then when the arbitrator's ruling comes through, you clearly see that Top Rank had the ability to terminate the agreement with Deontay Wilder back in December. But the fact is, they didn't terminate it. They kept planning the fight. They kept talking to PBC. And, you know, I've got many, many thoughts, and very valid ones, on what's happened here. I want to do a little more digging into this, but in my opinion, this whole thing absolutely stinks. End quote. So in his opinion, Lee, he believes that the entire process was a ruse, and they never had any intention of fighting Anthony Joshua. What are your thoughts on, well, Deontay Wilder pulling out the tinfoil cap and coming up with the conspiracy theory that this was a ruse the entire time?
The first question I'm asking is, well, how does that benefit Top Rank? How does it benefit Tyson Fury?
Exactly.
I'm not sure. You know, where is that? Okay, maybe it is a ruse, but then what do they get out of it? Like, there has to be some sort of a motive. It's a crime, right? Okay, well, where's the first thing you say is motive? What's a motive? Did this, I don't see any motive behind that. Other, unless they wanted people to get disappointed, there was no motive. I think that they just, once the verdict came down, they just threw their hands up in the air and said, "Well, we got to go through it. We'll do it," and then that's it. And I guess they just said, "Hey, you know what? We'll talk later." Yeah, no motive to do that.
You know what, Lee? You're way too logical for the boxing business, brother. No. Look, this doesn't make any sense. And Eddie Hearn is just trying to make sense of something that's actually very easy to make sense of. Look, guys, when you think about it, Bob Arum is tired of bleeding money because of all these guys' absurd guaranteed purse demands, right? Now, keep in mind the rematch, even though it had an enormous live gate of $19 million and did a reasonably healthy pay-per-view draw of 850,000 purchases domestically, this still lost money because they paid out both fighters $60 million, almost $30 million apiece. And then when you consider that Fox and ESPN spent almost $5 million promoting this event, yeah, it lost money. So Bob Arum is like, you know what? I'm tired of losing money. Let's try to scrap this thing and let's try to move on and try to go with a guaranteed winner. And so that's what they did. They rolled the dice. What they didn't anticipate is securing funds. They didn't anticipate that it was going to take 5 months to do it. Right? And surely Eddie Hearn has to understand this. How many times did you hear, starting back in January, well, we hope the fight to be signed, sealed, and delivered in 2 weeks. We hope to make an announcement in 2 weeks. How many times did you hear that over the course of the past 5 months, Lee? Lee, are you there, sir? Are you there, sir? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, sir. Okay, now I can't hear you.
I'm not saying anything.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So surely, then I'm asking you, surely that can't be that difficult to understand for a brilliant guy like Eddie Hearn, that they didn't anticipate this taking 5 months to put this deal together and to secure funds. Yes, I know it was a $155 million site fee that they're talking about, but they did not plan on this taking 5 months. They were hoping to fight this, to put together Fury versus Joshua before the arbitration even came to a head. And when it didn't, right? When it didn't, then they said, and like, yeah, you know what? We have no confidence it's going to happen. We're just going to move on. So he booked the venue, and he went through the process of already going to plan B, which was to fight Deontay Wilder for a third time. Because Eddie Hearn is wondering why this was put together so quickly, in almost immediately after the arbitration results came through. Lee, am I wrong in putting this together logically?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe they had some sort of a back door with Deontay Wilder, just in case the verdict came in like it did. Maybe there was some sort of a, maybe they were negotiating with, they were sort of double dipping negotiating wise. And if the verdict went one way, well, they had a deal with Wilder. If it went the other way, they had a deal with Joshua. That's my best guess.
So, okay, so I think we can both agree that the conspiracy theories by Eddie Hearn and a lot of YouTube channels are absolutely absurd. Listen to this, Lee. I've actually heard this, that this was payback. This whole process was nothing but payback for Matchroom Sport bidding on Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos several months ago. Can you believe that?
That's silly. That's just silly. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, this doesn't. This announcement. This doesn't help. The big fight is obviously Joshua versus Fury. That's a big fight. Yep. Having to take that back doesn't help either side. Doesn't help either camp. In my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right. And thank you for joining us today, Spencer. God bless you, brother. And he writes, adding, they hoped Wilder would take step aside if they did lose the arbitration decision, the judgment. Obviously, and from what we've learned subsequent to the arbitrator's ruling, is that, yeah, Wilder just wants his retribution and pound of flesh. And to him, that's worth so much more than $20 million, which he wouldn't have gotten anyway. So, guys, we're going to look forward to Fury versus Wilder 3. It's a done deal. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir. Lee, are you there, sir?
Can you hear me?
Are you there, Lee? Say something, brother.
Oh.
I can hear your mic going in and out, but yeah.
Okay, I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, I can hear me perfectly too. Yeah, it's probably just a loose connection on your mic. Probably just a loose connection on your mic.
Maybe.
Just see if you can.
Yeah. I disconnected.
Okay, I can hear you perfectly now.
Okay. You know what? It's a good comment because maybe they just assume that maybe That was option 3. Maybe Wilder would take a step aside, $5 million step aside money. So maybe they had 3 options. Like, okay, well, we'll work, we'll go through the back door with Wilder based on the verdict. We'll go back to Wilder and see if he takes step aside money, and if he doesn't, well, then we'll already have a deal with him. So maybe that was part of the equation. I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the equation. But yeah, you don't want to go too high in step aside money. So yeah, like I think $5 million was something that they would not, probably way too low for Wilder if he would take anything at all.
Okay, well, Tay writes once again, if Wilder somehow defied the odds and beat Fury, I think Wilder versus AJ is just as huge as AJ versus Fury, and you are right on the money, brother. Maybe not in the UK, but definitely in the USA, and definitely all over the rest of the world. That's a huge fight if he stops or defeats Tyson Fury. But when you say somehow defied the odds, it might surprise fans to learn that the odds makers have labeled this, have deemed this as a very competitive fight. The odds right now, according to most racing sports books, and the one we always like to consult is BetMGM out of Vegas. They list Deontay Wilder as only a very live plus 250 or 2.5 to 1 betting underdog. Lee, are you a bit surprised that the odds are that tight?
Well, not really, because I know one reason is I know had this fight come off in June or July of last year, then the odds were still, even fresh off that knockout, the odds were still not overwhelming. They weren't overwhelming. I think the reason is you have got to look at a couple of things. Is you're almost asking yourself, what are the odds of Fury beating Wilder 3 times? I mean, obviously the first fight was a draw. A lot of people think Fury won that. So really, what are the odds of him beating him 3 times in a row? And then number 2, you're taking into consideration that the power that he has. So he's got that one-punch knockout power, at any time. He's got all-time historic power.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're looking at those things. Like, can he beat this guy 3 times in a row?
That is an excellent point, brother. And you know what? That is article worthy, my friend. I can feel the typewriter heating up right now, brother. That's going to be out in publication in the AM on the FightSaga.com, guys. So look for that in the morning. Be sure to subscribe and bookmark, not only to War Week Radio, guys, but also FightSaga.com. Visit it on the daily. You know what? So that's a very good question. So, Lee, if you were Malik Scott, what can you do? Because once again, Fury is a tough nut to crack. Obviously, no one's been able to figure it out up to this point. How do you defeat the chameleon in the ring, a guy who can seemingly do it all and move the way he does for a giant 6'9" man? Let me ask you this, Lee. If you're his trainer, what changes would you make and what game plan would you come up with to defeat Tyson Fury if you're Deontay Wilder's trainer?
Wow. I'm gonna say somehow outthink him. Maybe set some traps, but I mean he's definitely gonna have to outthink him. He's not gonna be able to outbox him. He's not gonna be able to outjab him. He's got to find a way to drop that right hand, or hit him with a sneaky uppercut. He's got to find a way. I see this fight a little like a chess match, and like you always use that analogy: a fighter gets a fighter in checkmate. He's got to somehow get this guy in checkmate via cerebrally, meaning that he's got to think a plan, strategize. You can't just say, okay, go in there and land the 1-2. You can't say, okay, we have to improve our infighting. You can't say, I think that all that's out the door. Improve movement, no. Improve footwork, no. At this point, you've really got to outthink him in the ring. find a way to land your bombs. I mean, it could be out-strategizing. Maybe have a way where maybe he takes the first 6 rounds off. Fury gets tired and he knocks him out in the 11th or 12th round. But he's got to have some plan. And it's got to be cerebral to where he can, at the end of the day, win a decision or ideally for him, get the knockout or at least knock him down several times to win a decision if it comes to that.
You know what? That's a very, very good point. In my opinion, when you look at the strategy they adopted for the second fight, Team Wilder, I thought that was the worst possible strategy you could possibly try and implement against a guy who naturally implements a ton of feints with that herky-jerky upper body movement. Like he's going to freeze you all night if you try to counter this guy. You don't wait on a guy like Tyson Fury. If you want to have any semblance of success, you've got to get off first. And he may not win the jabbing contest, but he's got to try, damn it. And I tell you what, I like what I see with Malik Scott in his work with Deontay Wilder in these videos they've been putting out. I like the implementation of feints. That's what you have to do. You've got to try and feint Fury so he commits and you see where that head is going. In my opinion, the key to this, all Wilder has to do to make this immediately a much more competitive matchup is try to win the jabbing contest, mix in some feints, use a more educated jab, touch jabs, feints, hard sticking jabs in the body and head like he already likes to do, and also get off first. He cannot wait on Tyson Fury or he's going to suffer the same result as the second fight. Get off first, be the predator in the ring, and try as hard as you can to win the jabbing contest. Give him something more to think about than that big right hand. In my opinion, if he just makes those adjustments, it becomes anyone's fight. Your final thoughts on this before we move on to the next topic, sir?
I think that's a good point. That's a good point. Great point. I still think that eventually it's going to come down to if he can force Fury to make a mistake, and then capitalizing on that mistake, or if he can catch him, kind of catch him off. Let's go back to the Ramirez-Taylor fight, where in the second knockdown, when they're exiting a clinch, and then boom, Taylor landed that huge, I think it was an uppercut, that floored him. If he's got to be on his P's and Q's, he's got to look for every opportunity. He's got to capitalize on any mistake. Fury makes, he's got to be there to capitalize it.
As he did in the first fight in round 12, brother.
Exactly. And as he did in both fights against Luis Ortiz, right?
Yep. So let me. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
I don't see Wilder winning much of the rounds. I really don't. I don't see him. I see him if he wins. I see it'll be like Luis Ortiz fashion, where it's either even or he's losing, and then he comes up with a knockout in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round, something to that effect. But I don't see him with a lead after 7 or 8 rounds, regardless.
Well, we will see because, judges in Las Vegas often favor the heavier punches with more torque, and that was obviously the case in the first fight, hence the draw. So we'll see what happens. I tell you what, Tay Spencer, once again, my brother, brings up a very good point. Can inactivity also play a role, Cleveland? Wilder had an injury and was in recovery while Fury was just sitting. They've both been inactive since February of 2020. Who is this an advantage for, Lee? Who gets the advantage here?
That's possibly neither. I guess my question would be, okay, we saw footage of Wilder entering the gym earlier this month. It was announced that Wilder is back in the gym. Is he back after like a year and a half? Or is he back in the gym training for Tyson Fury, but was in the gym sporadically in 2020? And was Tyson Fury in the gym? Tyson Fury looks in shape. Even now, he looks thin. So I'm thinking, well, maybe he's in and out of the gym, getting some workouts here or there. If Wilder is just entering the gym after, in a year and a half, that might be a problem. If he's just entering the gym, because I think Fury's been training on and off. But in the end, I don't see it as a big issue. But what I do see as an issue, though, Joseph and Tay, is this guy's got a new trainer, and as we talked about before, when fighters have new trainers after long layoffs, especially Triple G, they tend to take the easier route first. That's why Triple G fought Steve Rolls, because he had a new trainer. He'd been off for a while.
Excellent point.
And fighters throughout history, when they get a new trainer, when we saw Vlad get with Emmanuel Stewart, he wasn't fighting the big cookies right away, right? So this could, he got a new trainer. He's learning a new style. He could go in there confused. He hasn't really. You can't get acclimated to a style in one fight. So I think that definitely works against Wilder.
That I love your insight, Mr. Cleveland. I tell you what, more reason for Deontay Wilder to adopt the role once again as the predator in the ring, because every fighter who I've asked this question to insists to me, including the late great Emmanuel Stewart, they insist to me that inactivity and ring rust it affects a lot more dramatically the counterpuncher by trade, the guy who depends on that timing and rhythm.
Exactly.
So, in my opinion, it would serve Deontay Wilder a lot more positively in the ring if he just adopted the role as aggressor, chose not to wait on Tyson Fury this time, and just let his hands go instinctively. That was a huge thing that Emmanuel just believed in. He's like, look, trust your instincts. You're a fighter. Trust your fighter instincts. Let your hands go instinctively. Don't wait on your opponent. And in my opinion, if Wilder just listens to his, inner fighter, if he's still the same guy brimming with confidence as he was in the first fight, this is an even money fight. In my opinion, why people are writing off Wilder in this thing, I think that's foolish. I think Wilder has a real chance here if he, one, tries to win the jabbing contest and works behind a more intelligent jab this time and becomes the aggressor and doesn't wait on Tyson Fury. I actually am looking forward to this fight. Am I foolish in saying that, Lee?
No, not at all. I am too. This is a great fight. It's a great matchup.
And I tell you what, I guarantee you that Anthony Joshua is going to be pulling out the pom-poms for Tyson Fury. I don't know if he wants to face Deontay Wilder, brother, later this year. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, both fights are big, like Tay said. I think both fights are probably almost equally as big as far as like the buzz and the money and the buys. But yeah, I think if you're Anthony Joshua, you might be leaning towards. It's hard to say, Joseph. I don't know, because of the boxing ability of Fury. It's really hard to say. They're both tough fights, as the Usyk fight is. All three of those are very tough fights. For very different reasons.
Oh, you just brought up another topic, so let's go into that. Joshua, should he be worried about Alexander Usyk overturning the apple cart and spoiling everyone's plans of a huge unification with Anthony Joshua?
You mean via a win or via a WBO decision? You mean a
No. I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less about dumping the title. And in my opinion,
right,
guys, don't be surprised if Eddie Hearn just decides to dump the WBO title. In my opinion, I think that would be the par shot, right? Like, does he want to go for the birdie? Does he want to go for the eagle? Or does he want to just hit par? In my opinion, I think they're sweating bullets about this Alexander Usyk matchup. This guy is a crafty and as statuesque as Joshua has appeared in the ring at times. I think Alexander Usyk gives Anthony Joshua fits should they fight in August or September. Your thoughts on the matchup?
It's great you can get to the big one because you're guaranteed a big money.
Lee, you're going in and out again, brother. Lee, are you there, sir?
Fight, no matter who wins between. It's a tough fight for him. You know, I think he beats Usyk. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly now, sir. Go on.
Yeah, it's a tough fight. You know, I think Joshua wins, but I mean, he's going to be looking for that big fight, whether it's Wilder or Fury. That's it. He's going to be looking for that, and he's got to get past this Usyk with this great technique and cruiserweight speed.
So why do you think Anthony Joshua gets past Usyk? Do you think it's, once again, the judges in the UK who favor the harder, more impactful shots? Because to be honest with you, I see him, well, his motion, his movement really being unsettling for Anthony Joshua. The often statuesque Anthony Joshua. I think his footwork really disrupts the timing and rhythm of Anthony Joshua in the ring. So why would you say that you think Anthony Joshua, why would you give him the clear edge?
I like his height and reach. I also like, the fact that he can box. We saw that against in the Ruiz fight. I think we'll see a similar. I think we'll see the sort of the technical version of Joshua, in and out. I think he'll be able to pile up the points. And he's got great technique too. He was an Olympic boxer as well. So I think we're going to see him win ugly. Usyk is good, obviously. He was taking the distance by Michael Hunter, and we've seen him. I guess he's only fought once at heavyweight, though. I'm sure he's sparring. He's
twice.
Sparring
he's fought twice.
Okay. I'm sure he's sparring heavyweights, obviously, but he's a great fighter. I think that the size. I think this guy, the 6'7", that long reach with those boxing abilities. I think Usyk is going to have to find a way to really knock him out like he did Tony Bello. He's going to have to find that opening. I don't think he wins a decision, and I think that Joshua's going to be on his hands and toes. He's going to be very technical. He's not going to give Usyk that opening.
Very good. And we want to welcome Mr. IOTBA, Corey Bradshaw. Thank you for joining us, brother. God bless you, man. It's good to see you on the board. And, he co-signs Mr. Lee Cleveland. He thinks your assessment is right on the money, and it's hard to disagree with your insight, man. That's why you're the editor of Fight Saga. So Mr. Tate Spencer says this: Usyk is his heaviest at this time. Can he carry that weight and move like that prior for a whole fight? Your thoughts on that, Lee? Is the added weight going to be a factor for Alexander Usyk?
He needs that added weight. You don't want to go in there, as a legit cruiserweight. He probably won't be quite as fast as we've seen him as a cruiserweight, but I don't think that the added weight's going to be. It's not going to make a lot of difference. Again, it's 6 in one hand and half a dozen in the other. If he comes in underweight, well, I think that might be a little faster, but that might negatively impact him in other ways. So as long as he doesn't come in like really big, as long as he comes in as a small heavyweight, I think he's fine.
Indeed.
But if he's gained if he comes in at, I don't know, 235 or 240, well then obviously that would be awesome.
Well, guys, we'll see. Let's hope this fight materializes, guys, for late August, early September. Guys, I tell you what, summer is shaping up beautifully right now, isn't it, Lee? I'll tell you what. So F you, Dana White. Boxing is alive and well. Thank you very much. But I tell you what, I just look forward to seeing all these fights materialize. Let's go to our final topic of the night. Lee has Terence Crawford. There's a lot of talk right now about Josh Taylor since his outstanding and impressive victory, unifying the 140-pound weight division in his impressive victory over Jose Ramirez. There's been a lot of talk now of him moving up to 47 and fighting Terence Crawford. Has that become the new quote-unquote Spence Crawford matchup at 47? Are fight fans looking more forward to? Are they anticipating more now? Taylor versus Crawford at 147 pounds. And who do you favor in that matchup, sir?
No, I don't think so. Not yet. I still think Josh Taylor's got a little way to go before his name is as big as Errol Spence's. So while that's a huge fight, it doesn't have the magnitude of Spence versus Crawford. Not yet. It's just a tough fight. I like, at 147, I still like Crawford. I like his experience. I like his technique, like his movement. I like how he can be southpaw, he can be in righty. I like how he switches up like that. A lot of it is his experience. He seems like he's always finding a way to win. Something doesn't work, he does something else. Something doesn't work, he does something else. So just all around, I think he's got an edge over Taylor. But it's definitely a super matchup.
Absolutely, brother. And it's funny, a lot of people, and we're going to see a lot of new life injected into the welterweight division very soon, because according to Jose Ramirez, he's tired of trying to kill himself to make 140 pounds. He too is going to be moving up. And when you consider that Regis Prograis has not made 140 on the dot since fighting Josh Taylor several years ago, he's come in heavy in his last two fights. You're going to see him moving up. You're going to see Josh Taylor, who's a big junior welterweight at 5 foot 10 inches tall. You're going to see all three of those fighters injecting new life in the welterweight division. What do you think about that, Lee?
That's insane, Joseph. That is absolutely insane. I mean, we thought the welterweight division was hot a few years ago, 5 years ago with Mayweather, Pacquiao, a very young Green Arrow Spence. But then we had, Robert Guerrero. Sean Porter was coming up, Kell Brook. But this current division, and with those guys coming up, that it even blows away that division. It's mind-blowingly hot, that division. Like it's definitely going to be those two guys coming up. It's insane, man. It's insane.
I'll tell you what, when I look
at Jaron Ennis too, I mean, with him coming up like he is.
Jaron Ennis, Virgil Ortiz, I love it. I love the welterweight division right now. Yeah, I look for all of these matchups to be just A+++ matchups. And specifically, when you look at Taylor versus Crawford, say what you want, but Taylor very well may be the Scottish Terence Crawford. He's got the ability to switch hit. He's got good feet. He's got a high ring IQ. He's a switch hitter like Terence Crawford. And in my opinion, he fights much more effectively on the inside than Terence Crawford. Say what you will, guys. Right now, I know Jose Ramirez is no Terence Crawford, but I love this matchup. And I think, of course I would favor Terence Crawford at this point, but this is a very difficult fight for TC. In my opinion, this is a must-see fight in which I think this could be fight of the year at 147. In my opinion, it's a lot more competitive than Spence versus a 42-year-old Manny Pacquiao. Maybe I'm dreaming, but I want to see it. Hopefully, after Josh Taylor fulfills apparently he made an agreement with Frank Warren to give Jack, whatever his name is, I don't even remember his name right now. Apparently he's the number one contender in the WBO, and apparently he wants a huge homecoming in Scotland. I'm sorry, Jack Catterall. My apologies. I don't mean to be disrespectful. And we just lost Lee for some reason. Guys, we'll continue with the show, though. Want to welcome Platinum Fights. He says Taylor has no shot versus Crawford. I like Crawford by late rounds KO. I don't know if he doesn't have any shot, but I also like Crawford in this by late rounds KO. Thank you for joining us, brother. Well, hopefully Lee can click on the link again and rejoin us because we still have a couple minutes left in the show. And we go to Tay Spencer. He says, Regis Prograis going to fight AB on Triller. Well, for Adrian Broner's sake, let's hope not, because he will completely get annihilated and, pardon my French, knock the fuck out, right? And Tay also states Ennis is the future, pound for pound. Would like to see him face Josh in about 2 years. Honestly, I just want to see him face any of the top guys in the division because I'm with you. He has it all. Pick your poison. How do you want him to beat your ass? He can do it all. He can fight proficiently from mid to long range. He's a switch hitter like Terence Crawford. He's proficient defensively as well. And also, he fights more effectively and more proficiently on the inside than Terence Crawford, throwing brilliant creative combinations to the body and head while defending himself effectively. I love that fight. And to be honest with you, yeah, I just want to see Ennis. I just want to see Boots Ennis in the ring. Let's go back to this topic, guys, very quickly before we bid everyone adieu. Mohammed, thank you for being here with us, brother. He says Spence looking anything short of spectacular. Okay, let's see. Lee is trying to get back in the queue. Oh, here he is. Let's add him to the show once again. Lee, welcome back, brother. So our good brother Muhammad says Spence looking anything short of spectacular against Pacquiao will be considered a lackluster performance. I'm not counting out Pacquiao at all. Thank you for joining us, Muhammad. Do you agree with the mighty Muhammad?
Well, it's hard to count out Manny Pacquiao. He's overcome so many obstacles in his career, and he does have a lot of experience. He's got that great footwork. He's an all-time great. So you really can't you can't count him out, and you can't you can't take anything away from Errol Spence if he struggles a little bit, or if he wins and doesn't struggle. You can't say, oh well, Pacquiao was this or that. He's still a great fighter, and he's still the lineal WBA champion. Because he did beat an undefeated Keith Thurman. So he's definitely not. This is definitely not an easy fight for Spence. Not by any means. No.
Yeah, especially in the early to mid rounds. I think Pacquiao's disjunct movements, his footwork gives Errol Spence problems early. But Errol Spence and his ring IQ, boy, it's something special. If Errol Spence is still EJ, and if he's still the truth, yeah, I see possibly Freddie Roach throwing in the towel late on this one, guys. In my opinion, if EJ is still the truth, I think this is a fight that Pacquiao just cannot win at age 42. But we'll find out. That's why they fight the fights. And let's go back to another comment from our brother Platinum Fights. He says, how many southpaws has Pac or Spence fought? That's what makes the fight so interesting to you. God bless you, brother. And you bring up a great point. Pacquiao hasn't fought a southpaw since knocking out David Diaz at 135 pounds. And Errol Spence Jr., he's only fought 2 southpaws in his career, and it was as he was coming up. Chris Van Heerden was one of them, and Lardy was the other, and neither of them are even remotely close to Manny Pacquiao's level. So that's an interesting point. We'll see how it plays out. Like I said, guys, that's why they fight the fights. Very quickly, Lee, we do have
is Bradley southpaw?
I'm sorry, what?
Is Bradley a southpaw? Tim Bradley? No,
but Tim Bradley has such a high ring IQ. He's proficient with both hands, even though he fought out of the orthodox stance. That guy could do it all. I mean, when you consider how severely outgunned Tim Bradley was in terms of size, reach, power, natural athleticism, boy, he found a way to win. In fact, the only guy to beat Tim Bradley in his professional career was the Pac monster Manny Pacquiao. That says, and once again, it's no, and it speaks volumes, because when you hear Tim Bradley analyze fights from the ESPN booth, yeah, he is spot on. He's very, very high ring IQ. And he obviously, with his work ethic, with his ring IQ, he got the most of himself. And once again, he beat everybody. This guy has 2 huge victories over Manny Pacquiao and Juan Manuel Marquez, as well as, a prime, the Ruslan Provodnikov in a fight of the year. Boy, that was an amazing fight. But I tell you what, let's move to this final topic very quickly, bonus topic for bonus money, Lee Cleveland. Canelo was recently in the mouths of Tim Bradley and Andre Ward, and the question was asked, who can beat Canelo Alvarez right now? And Tim Bradley said the only guy he thinks can beat a prime Canelo Alvarez right now at 168 pounds would be his brother, SOG, son of God, Andre Ward. Do you agree with that, Lee Cleveland?
Yeah, it's a hell of a fight. It's a hell of a fight. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend that if Ward were to come back, I wouldn't recommend that they fight at 168. I'd recommend they fight at 175. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's just to me, it's a tough fight. You know, Ward's got so many tools and so many weapons. It's a tough fight, man. Super tough.
Yeah, but you have to wonder. Well, you have to wonder, after 4 years of inactivity, and also him ending his career at 175 pounds, what weight would they possibly compete in if Andre Ward?
I would not. I would definitely not fight him at 168. No.
yeah. If Andre Ward did decide to come out of retirement and face Canelo Alvarez in a super fight, a legacy fight, what weight would this be held at? I mean, you'd have to think logically it'd be at 175.
Right.
Andre Ward, he couldn't even make 168 at the tail end of his career. He ended his career at 75, guys.
Right. The only thing is, then Canelo no longer has a title at 175. Usually they want to make some sort of a title at stake. But that fight would be big, regardless of a title. It would still be big.
Oh, come on, man! You know the WBC would come up with a special commemorative title for this mythical pound for pound fight. I mean, come on, the jalapeno belt, man. Come on, brother. They'd come up with something. The chorizo belt, man.
Tough fight. That's a tough fight. After 4 years coming back against Canelo, I don't even think he should do it. I mean, are they talking about that?
No, just fans. That's all. Since Tim Bradley actually let the count out of the bag and started talking about that mythical pound for pound matchup, now all the fans are discussing it, creating a lot of interest, right? So who knows? Maybe Andre Ward still has that itch. According to Bradley, Dre still is in the gym quite frequently. So, and he looks to be in still good shape, but fighting shape is a completely different thing. Does Andre Ward want to go through another grueling camp at his age? That's a huge factor. I mean, Lee. I mean, elaborate on this, because most fans, they don't take into consideration all the wear and tear that those camps, those grueling camps, take a toll on your body.
Oh, they do. They take a real toll on your body, and especially if you're a guy like Ward, who's been fighting since he was 7 or 8 years old, or younger. All those years and years and years of, fans only look at fights, only look at pro fights. They don't look at all of the amateur fights. They don't look at all of the amateur training. They don't look at all the pro training. They don't look at all the pro sparring. They don't look at all the amateur sparring, all the amateur running, all the pro running. That's just a lot of wear and tear on your body. Now, Andre Ward is still young enough to come back and make waves. Definitely, he's definitely. Sugar Ray Leonard came back after a few years to beat Hagler. But again, that was sort of a Hagler on the tail end of his career. If you're Andre Ward, I'm not really sure if you come back for that one big fight. You might want to come back like Sugar Ray Robinson took several years off, and he had like 4 or 5 prep fights. If you're Andre Ward, you might want to have a few prep fights before you get in the ring with a guy like Canelo. You might want to. It might take a little while. You might want to have like at least 2 prep fights before you really get in there with a top guy like Canelo. But he's young enough. He's still young enough, I think. Yeah.
He is still young enough. And he went out before he took any severe punishment.
Right, and he does have that. His body is refreshed. He's relapsed for several years, so he is coming in with sort of like a refreshed. He's a young, whatever his age is. He's a young, 33 or 34, because he hasn't fought in the last several years. So that's in his, like George Foreman took that 10-year layoff, came back, his body was a little bit refreshed. So we'll have to see. I mean, he's definitely young enough and good enough to be a world champion and make waves. Yeah.
Well, let's go to Platinum Fights. He writes a comment: Ward mauls Canelo like he did Edison Miranda or Alan Green. Boy, let's hope not. Because as good as Andre Ward was, boy, he was unwatchable at times, wasn't he, Lee?
Right. As you would say, he wasn't the most aesthetically pleasing. Like he had a great fight when he moved up. Remember that Chad Dawson fight? Everyone was talking about it. He looked like a monster. But no, he's not the kind of guy that's going to overwhelm you. He's not going to have these eye-catching punches, and he's not going to. His movement, he's more of a kind of a workman's like fighter, but he gets it done. And he's got a million tricks, man. Got a million tricks on the inside.
Ooh. Boy, his ability to control range with that educated, brilliant jab of his, man, it was something special. The only thing I didn't like about Andre Ward was his, just like Platinum Fights pointed out, his mauling kind of Huggy Bear style on the inside where he would grapple with you. And it's funny, I spoke with Edwin Rodriguez shortly after their fight together, and he said, Andre Ward's kind of weird. It's hard to figure out. It almost feels like he wants to tie you up on the inside. And so you start to relax and, concede to holding. Uh-huh. And then all of a sudden he'll crack you with a 1-2 on the inside and he'll go, whoa. So yeah, it's befuddling to say the least. But I tell you what, it would be something for the fans, a mythical matchup between Andre Ward and Canelo Alvarez. Let's hope it materializes, because to be honest with you, as good as these fighters are at 168 pounds, Caleb Plant, David Benavidez, I can't see anyone beating this version of Canelo Alvarez in his prime at super middleweight. Your final thoughts before we bid everyone an excellent evening, Lee Cleveland?
Yeah, this would be a true super fight. Andre Ward is one of the few fighters, reminds me a little bit of a Roy Jones earlier, never really had that super fight, right? Like a guy on that level. Sure, he fought Kovalev twice, but he's never had that master fight, right? And for a guy on that level to have beaten so many guys, he's never really, his fights have never really been. He deserves a fight like a Canelo fight, or like a fight where his name is in lights like Mayweather's or Canelo's or Joshua's or Fury's, because he's never really had that. That might be what he wants, because he's never really had that. You know what I'm saying? That super mega fight. He's had a big.
You're
fight.
absolutely right. Yep.
Never that mega fight. For a guy on that level that's undefeated, it's very odd, for a fighter like that to never have that mega fight. That fight where the entire mainstream is watching, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, he never had that opportunity because of the time or the division that he was in, right, when he was in his prime. And unfortunately, I tell you what, I would have loved to have seen him versus Joe Calzaghe at 168 or 175 pounds, wouldn't you?
Oh, that would have been great. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
So who wins that fight? Joe Calzaghe, Joey Zaza?
I
Dre.
can't even tell you, man. I can't even tell you, man. I'm just, man.
Well, I tell you what, guys, that's going to just about do it for this episode or this edition of War Week Radio Chats. Guys, once again, if you haven't subscribed to War Week Radio, please go do so. And guys, go ahead and share. Go ahead and subscribe. And once again, guys, look for both Lee and my articles on FightSaga.com. Oh boy, we're gonna close it out with one last comment. What about Floyd versus Canelo rematch? Any thoughts? Ain't gonna happen, brother. Canelo is in his fighting prime at 168 pounds, and there's no way in Hades Floyd is gonna fight at super middleweight. Thank you for the endorsement, Platinum Fights. Thank you for
especially when he can make millions and millions fighting you or me or anybody else.
Oh boy. Okay, that's another thing, Cleveland. The closer we get to Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather, are we going to cover that fight?
Yes, certainly. You know, I hear a lot of bets are coming in for Logan Paul. That's what
why
odds makers tell me. I have no idea, but I mean, I'll send you that email that he sent me though. But a lot of bets are coming in for Logan Paul.
Well, I maybe
more bets, I believe. I'll have to do a deep dive into that email, but I'll send that to you.
Well, when you're referring to mainstream and casual fans, ignorance is indeed bliss, my friend. And that's going to just about do it, guys. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. If you missed any part of the show, go ahead and listen to the replay. We want to thank everyone for joining us. Shout out to Corey. Shout out to Tay Spencer. Shout out to Platinum Fights. Shout out to Muhammad. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And on behalf of Mr. Lee Cleveland, editor of FightSaga.com, I'm Joseph Herron. Thank you for listening to War Week Radio. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.